Cool. So I think we're rocking and rolling.
Let's go.
So hi, this is Alex from the Millennial Entrepreneur. I'm here with one of my really good friends, Jared. We played U20s rugby together. He's out in Manchester, England. He went to Copenhagen Business School and he worked for Morgan Stanley. And just great to have him.
Thank you for having me, mate. It's really good to see you. This is a really exciting project that you're doing. As we discussed, I think this is going to be really relevant for people who are asking lots of questions in terms of, what should they do with their lives? Have they got that entrepreneurial spirit? What options do they have? In front of them. So no, it's really good to catch up on a topic that we both share interest on, and yeah, wish you all the best.
Yeah, appreciate it. And Jared had actually reached out to me on one of my Instagram posts and showed a lot of interest. So felt like it'd be, great to have him on. So it's good to kind of have old friends kind of catch up after some period of time. So,
Definitely.
well, great. I think we'll hop right into it. So, Jared, if you could tell me a bit about your experience at business school, and you mentioned a module, maybe an entrepreneurship module that you had worked on, and kind of how the audience could use those tools or any notes you have for them to grow and become better business people.
Yeah, so taking it back to the raw basics, if you like, you ask yourself, okay, what is it to be entrepreneurial or to have that entrepreneurial mindset? I think for me, I was asking myself them questions when I first started my, university education. You hear a lot of these success stories, the Jeff Benzos, the Steve Jobs, and so on. Real entrepreneurs who have, started businesses from the ground up. So we're almost in an environment now where, okay, we have these people to look up to. So as a younger person, I ask myself these questions. Okay, what does it mean? Am I entrepreneurial? Do I have that entrepreneurial mindset already? A lot of videos I used to watch, a lot of TED Talks, for example, it would always say, okay, you have to be born with this entrepreneurial spirit or this special sauce, if you like, that you had to have. If you didn't have it, you couldn't be a businessman, you couldn't make it, you couldn't be a multimillionaire, you couldn't achieve your dreams. So I think years ago, that was what we were consciously sort of taught, and that was ingrained into us. The thing I found out at the sort of early stages of business school and so on was, okay, well, I don't have to have something special or something unique per se in terms of an entrepreneurial flair to become successful. I think, as we've discussed before, you can ask yourself, an entrepreneur, or if you had to read it by the dictionary, for example, it's very much, okay, a person that starts a company from the ground up, which a lot of people do, and that's one avenue to take. I think the avenue where I looked at it was, you can be an entrepreneur in a business. It can be a business, with 10 people, with 10,000 people. You can be an entrepreneur within that landscape. I think I was too much of an introvert to go it alone. If I had any ideas, for example, with a business, I was sort of shrouded by my environment or the society that I was in terms of, no, I can't do that. You'll fail. You won't make it by yourself, which is such a common misconception. So I took the route of, okay, well, how can I adopt that similar mindset, the things you learn at university in the modules, for example, and apply it in a workplace. So yeah, you mentioned business school. I did do a module when I went to Copenhagen, which was, I don't know how much you know about the Danish sort of business or the startup scene over there.
I'm not too familiar, no, and some American listeners may not be, so that could be a good.
No, well, I actually, when I was over there, it changed me a lot because I was rooming with an American guy, and he went to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and as soon as I met him, and all of his friends as well, they had their own businesses in terms of, they used to sit up all night coding. He was a DJ as well, and there was a different attitude which struck me quite a lot. In the sense of, okay, well, these guys are going for it here. The guy's up all night coding. He's got a real entrepreneurial mindset. What are we doing differently in the UK? And that was just purely down to his environment. So for me, it was, you learn tools, you can learn theories at university all the time, but I think, as you'll know as well, with your experience, it comes down to the individual. It doesn't matter what you can learn in the classroom. It comes down to how you are as a person. I'm sure you can you can tell us more about that with your successes as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's from what I've learned, I'd always heard that it's not what you know, it's kind of who you know.
Yeah.
And that to me, the relationships and specific knowledge are critical. So like not necessarily a certain degree. Yes, it gets you kind of up to a certain level, but some people just have a specific knowledge that gets them kind of from A to B so much faster than someone that's just, has a master's or maybe even a PhD. It's just they know how to skip over the junk, and that's what I see as critical.
You've got to think. I almost ask myself, okay, Mark Zuckerberg, for example, right? It's quite recent. It's not that long ago. He was sitting in a college dorm room, just as many millions of students do every single year. What was the difference between what he done versus what so many millions of students, for example, fail at every single year? So I think a big part of it is risk. We're ingrained to be critical thinkers at university, right? At college. So we're always thinking critically in essays. We're always critiquing other people's ideas and so on. So what that translates to is almost, okay, if we have an idea, the first thing we think about is not how successful it could be, but, how it could fail. Okay, well, what if this goes wrong? What if, something doesn't go right in that mindset? So I think having, that appetite for risk, is, it's such a big part of it. Why not? Okay, wake up one morning and start that business you've been talking about, regardless of the risks and so on. And, that's how I try to, think in terms of, okay, these successful entrepreneurs, well, what did they think about it and what was their risk appetite towards it? So yeah, interesting factor towards it, really.
No, it's like you've brought up Mark Zuckerberg and Bezos and even Elon Musk and some of those guys who, in my opinion, had the building blocks, because Elon Musk did, I think it was PayPal before he ever did Tesla, but
Yeah.
they had the intelligence, they had the team, they had, more importantly, the timing, in my opinion. Like, I think you could have been a Jeff Bezos 60 years ago. And I think he would have been successful in general, but I don't know if he would have been thrown to the type of successes that he has. I mean, I've seen it in the CBD industry where it's like, it is a new and budding industry. And a lot of people thought it was going to be like a $20 billion industry, which I'm not sure if that's real anymore, but there is a lot of growth that can happen in it. And if you were in it at the right time, or even the cannabis side, and you had the right timing, you were willing to put the risk down, you were willing to work with a team, then you were able to grow so much faster than everyone else was.
Do you think, okay, so take the CBD industry, for example, do you think if for example, we got told in the news or the media this evening and it said, okay, tomorrow the CBD industry it's gonna boom, it's gonna be the next big thing, which, rightly so, it has been in certain aspects, especially in America as well. So in your own opinion, what would you do? Would you, okay, wake up tomorrow morning and say, right, we're starting this business, we're gonna go into it, all guns blazing? Or would you wait a month and say, okay, we're going to learn from people, that make failures or do well in the first month or so, and then we're going to come into the market later on? So these are fundamental questions that you've almost got to ask yourself and think, okay, well, am I the person that goes in all guns blazing from day one? Yeah, or a bit of a later adopter and learns from other people. So what do you think on that? What would you do?
So I actually have a very interesting view of that, in my opinion, because I work at a company that we started very early in the hemp industry. It kind of, the way it went was THC. I was up in Oregon. THC was up in Oregon. And then that had its boom. And then CBD was right off the edge of that. And so this company started right off the edge of THC and to the start, like day one almost, of CBD. And we went and we grew and, we're in multiple states and expanded. But as we went, we saw the industry come up and peak and then fall off a little bit, where people thought, this is a a $20 billion industry. So what people started doing is they started looking at market share. And so they wanted to get as big as they could to take as much of that market share as possible. But what happened is it came up, the 20 billion evaluation started to kind of get kinks in its armor, and people weren't seeing the returns. The price dropped, some compression in the industry knocked a ton of people out. And now our company had merged with another company who was kind of on the fringe. They were building their own facility, but hadn't fully, I guess they were fully in it, but they weren't there at the start. They kind of hit that second wave. And now I think personally, we're in an extremely good position. And what they did is just what you're referring to, in that they waited until that second wave to get in. I think there were winners on the first side, but you had to have the right team. And you didn't know what was real yet. Everyone was just throwing stuff at the wall, and a lot of it didn't work.
Yeah. It's interesting because we in the UK, especially the lot of trends that we see in the US, you know, we're likely to see them in the UK. Maybe, you know, if it's really successful, like an app, for example, you know, a few weeks later or a few months later, or if it's something, you know, remedial, or it's, you know, medicine or something like that, it might be further down the line. So it's interesting to learn. We almost learn from you guys in the States as well, because we're very similar in terms of our culture. But but no, I think in the CBD industry, because it's one of them where, okay, well, nobody really knows, is this going to be a product that you know, lasts for a long period of time? Yeah. Or is it going to be, you know, a bit of a quick fix, a quick win? People will talk about that peak there. Okay, consumers, are they going to like it for, you know, for the rest of their life? Or is it going to be a bit of a fad or something that passes until something else comes along? So I think this all ties back to, okay, your market research. If there's somebody watching this in the sense of, okay, well, I've got an idea for a product on a market. You know, what's the next steps? And do I go in all guns blazing tomorrow, or do I wait it out? I think, you know, fundamentally that comes down to, is it a gut feeling? Or is it, you know, something that really shines out to you on the market that says, okay, well, doesn't matter if there's somebody else in there. It doesn't matter if the market's flooded already now. You know, we should go in as well, and we should do it, because, you know, every company or every individual can have their own unique selling point, which I think is so relevant these days, because the message can be out there really quickly. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Oh, it's one of the things I would refer it to as well as, I don't know if you guys have Kratom out in England. Are you guys familiar with Kratom?
We don't.
So whenever CBD was blowing up as this kind of alternative, you know, as far as they didn't know exactly what the benefits were, maybe inflammation or some other things. But when that was blowing up, something called Kratom started hitting. And Kratom is, it's almost like a caffeine replacement, but it has some other attributes to it as well, where it's, if used in high dosage, it can almost be like an opioid.
Okay, yeah.
So it's like it was unregulated. No one knew what it was, and it was extremely risky. Everyone thought the FDA was going to come in and shut it down immediately. But, you know, that was maybe 2 years ago. And I know someone now that went full bore into Kratom, when I personally thought it was going to fail. You know, I thought since the opioid portions of it would get regulated to the pharma level. But this guy now does 8 million in revenue a month just on Kratom, just because 2 years ago he went full bore into it and just never looked back. I don't always suggest that, but that's how you can really, you know, penetrate a market. And I think some of the things you're referring to as far as market analysis and understanding market share and where it's going to go is critical. But he decided to take the risk, you know, and that one paid off, at least for right now.
Absolutely right. And, you know, coming from you know, the business school mindset, in the, you know, you can do all the market analysis you want. You can print a million graphs off. You can do all the consumer research and stuff that you want to, but ultimately it comes down to risk and timing. Yeah. You know, if you are willing to take the risk and you know, establish that from an early stage, then say, okay, right, I'm going to take this regardless. I'm going to plunge in. I'm going to go all guns blazing from day one. Okay, then be smart about it and calculate, okay, well, what's my biggest risk? what could
Yeah.
potentially happen if you're going to the bank, for example, and lending $100,000 to start this business, then straight away there's your risk.
Yeah.
But if you're like so many businesses these days starting online, you've got minimal startup costs, for example, okay, then your risks aren't that big. So I think what people need to do is, it's great that people do the market research, they do the analysis, they find the consumers, but calculate your risk. Okay, so I'm starting an internet company tomorrow. It's writing, publishing information, for example. My risk isn't that big as long as I haven't took a big loan out, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If I have, on the other hand, okay, then straight away you've got a big financial risk. So there's lots of other questions you need to ask yourself then. But I think in today's society, we're in a perfect position to be able to calculate these risks ourselves and take them. Back in 30, 40, 50 years ago, you needed £1 million to build a business, to build the actual physical bricks and mortar. Whereas today you don't. So know your industry and know what it requires for sure.
Yeah, it's we've seen something in our industry where there's a couple styles that I've seen in business where people will come in and they'll measure their risk. Some guys want to walk in and be the absolute top dog, take all market share possible. And what they'll do is they'll take on all these investors. They'll, take on huge amounts of risk for this huge potential return. And then we have some guys who take very small risk. They never expanded. They kept it tight, one office. They kept maybe 10 people. And what they did is every month they just did the same thing. And, both can be successful. I'd say it's less risky, obviously, just from a financial standpoint, just to stay tight and small. And now they're in an amazing position where someone could buy them out if they wanted to, but they didn't have that insane growth that the other guys that took way more risk. But one of the things I thought was interesting, you were saying about the market analysis, you could do that forever. You could run it dry until the market's already passed. I mean, you could just stay on the safe side and never touch it. And I saw on a TED Talk, they said, instead of ready, aim, fire, they ready, fire. So they said the industry with the technology and how quickly we move these days, you don't have time to aim. So you get everything ready as best you can. You do your due diligence. You make sure your T's are crossed and everything's straight, and then you just go. And you don't wait.
I think for example, if you said to me, okay, Jared, you're going to start a business tomorrow from the ground up, how would I go about it, or what would I use, what method would I adopt to do this? And business school has its functions, it has its purpose, and sometimes a lot of it's irrelevant. For me, a good sort of concept that I picked up was everybody will read or study entrepreneurship will be familiar with Schumpeter and Schumpeter's theory of entrepreneurship. And I think an important concept that he talks about is disruptive entrepreneurship, or this being this disruptor in the market. So if I had to apply that, I would say, okay, well, if I'm making this product that I have in the market tomorrow, who am I disrupting? Is it making a change? For example, the CD industry, and I think it was LimeWire, years ago, people started streaming music online, and records and CDs become redundant almost overnight in some sense. So it's almost about, okay, well, is my product going to replace something else? Is my idea going to replace something else or take market share from something else? I think if you have a product or an idea that does that, then you're definitely onto a winner. It becomes more difficult when you're making another chocolate bar, another energy drink, something like that. Okay, then that's when the market analysis and the psychology and all them gurus come on board. So I think if you said to me, okay, well, your business tomorrow, you need to fully understand your product, fully understand, okay, what difference am I going to make to any market? And I think as an entrepreneur, you can have the biggest ideas, the best ideas. Okay, well, set yourself that target, set yourself the big ideas. But at the same time, it's the baby steps of, okay, well, is there somebody next door in a shop next door that's doing something better than me? And I bypassed it because my dreams are so big and my ideas are really big. And, it's very interesting. I like to adopt the psychology method of it and look into the psychology of things. Okay, do we really know our consumers? Do we really know Joe Blogs off the street next door? And a lot of the times we think we do, but we don't. So if, my advice to any entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs would be, you've got to know, your clients and know your consumers, definitely, as you'll certainly know in the industry.
No, I listen to, I do a lot of self-learning, like I think you do as well. And there's a marketer, I forget his name, but he's extremely well known. And he wrote a blog every day for like 7 years.
Right.
And he's kind of just blown up. But he was reviewing the creator of Vans.
Okay.
So Vans, they have, they're $50 to $100 pair of shoes maybe, and they donate money to other countries, and they have the word Vans instead of just a logo. And he said, like you were saying, selling a chocolate bar or energy drink, who needs a pair of shoes? When you go, and if your shoes aren't tore up, or maybe it's just day to day, it's not like a special event, like who really needs another pair of shoes? Why would you ever spend something? And he said the important thing that the Vans created did, whether he knew it or not, he took middle-class women who couldn't afford the Louis Vuittons and these shoes that are extremely expensive, and gave them a tool that they could use in their social class to say that they have kind of like a feather in their hat. They have something that other people don't. And they could buy these Vans, donate to other countries. So now they have, if you're wearing them, people know that you're donating money and that you care about the community, you care about the world, and you're giving money to these less fortunate people. And he was like, it was genius to come after that middle-class woman who wanted that at the time, because the high market had its suppliers, the base market had its, but there was no middle to high class supplier that was giving something that was within their budget, that gave them the tool that they wanted. So it's just like you're referring to, as far as knowing your market. Who is your true consumer of this? And I thought that was a very powerful piece, because I've never been on the marketing or advertising side. I was always operations, so I never dealt with that. But it was just so simple the way he portrayed that's what it really means.
Yeah, and it comes back to, okay, when we go in a shop for something that we don't really need, a pair of trainers, an energy drink, a t-shirt, for example, where our ability to buy it, or that urge to actually purchase this item comes in, is, okay, well, what am I associating by buying this item? So for example, if I buy the Yeezy shoes, okay, well, I'm buying into that social scene, that that look, that certain atmosphere and that certain attitude. So with it comes, okay, well, exactly like you've said then, okay, people are going to look to buy something. Okay, does it have that ethical impact? Or the sweatshop scenario, for example, years and years ago with Nike and firms like that, a lot of people were turned off by that because they found out, okay, the downstream social impact, this isn't sustainable, this doesn't fit with my morals. Nike are making really good shoes, really expensive shoes, but they're making people work and make them in sweatshops in poorer countries. So a lot of what we do in terms of how we pick things and how we select things in a store comes down to, okay, what's the downstream impact? Everybody now knows how things are made. They know what companies do. It's not like going back 30 years ago where there was no internet and we couldn't go on Facebook or couldn't go on YouTube and check out, okay, what company's sustainability targets or something like that. Whereas you ask somebody now on the streets, and a lot of people do know, compared to a different generation than ours. So again, relating it back to somebody, if you're an entrepreneur who's, okay, you've got a product, you're making something. There's lots of young people now who start clothing labels, who start brands and so on. And I think it's really good. They use social media to its full capacity and, its full advantages of marketing that product. Okay, but okay, if this becomes a sustainable business and it does well, people start digging more into it and start digging more into the product. So So what's your downstream impact? Where you're making these clothes? Because people will find out. And if your company's, for example, listed on the stock exchange, and somebody finds out that, you know, the shoes are made in, you know, a sweatshop in China or the Middle East, you know, it has a big impact on you. So if you're starting a business, you know, don't just know your product, and don't just know, okay, what does this product do? Know the downstream impacts, know where it's made. For example, you know, you've got to cover all angles, which is really important, especially so as now younger people are clued up with finance and, you know, and media. So definitely it's important, really is.
Oh, it's so true. We've seen in the CBD industry people that forego quality. That's kind of our equivalent. People that forego safety and OSHA regulations and solvent control and things like that with quality. And there's these forums that no one knew was going to exist because CBD was so new. But now these companies are just getting there's almost a following that doesn't work with any of that type of company because they know that's where their product comes from, even if it is a competitive product with a good price. It's how it's made that really upsets them to the point where they're willing to forego the affordability and not purchase
and
it.
How it started in the UK in terms of CBD was with professional sports players.
Really?
You know,
Okay.
nobody had heard of it. You know, nobody knew that it was related to cannabis or hemp or anything like that. They just started seeing, okay, lots of professional athletes using CBD oil as a bit of a remedy, you know, to help people sleep better, to help them recover quicker. And nobody, I don't think, knew what it actually was, you know, who started it and so on. So was it similar in the States, or how was it, you know, in the early days when people started adopting them? What was your first sort of oversight of it?
So, you know, in the way things progressed in America is the what they'll call like the Cannabis Revolution. Happened. You know, Oregon, California, Colorado were kind of the three pillars in that. So everyone starts going on THC. You know, THC has obvious effects. It helps with pain. You know, it gives you not a mind altering, but something that can relax you, similar to like an alcohol replacement or something like that. So there's obvious and clear benefits. And then as they started playing with the genetics of the plants, they started growing higher levels of CBD. And people started using it, and they started seeing different effects with different cannabinoids. So then it wasn't just THC anymore, it was the cannabinoid profile. Because if you smoke with THC, or you smoke with the same level of THC but more CBD, you will have less anxiety, and you'll have a much cleaner high. Like, I don't know if you had smoked much or anything. I think you may have, but
Well, maybe that Goff.
I don't know. But if you've ever smoked and you got really anxious, some people have a natural predisposition to this just because they're, you know, some people who take things like ibuprofen need to take like baby's ibuprofen or like lower dosage because they just have a lower tolerance. And so you can use CBD as a competitor on, I think it's like the CB1 receptor. So like THC and CBD will try and go for the same receptor, and you'll still get the same dose of THC, but it's not as sharp and it's not as aggressive, and it doesn't put you in that anxiety level. So people are like, wow, CBD has all of these benefits when mixed with THC. And then people started isolating plants, kind of genetically modifying just to make CBD. And they're like, okay, what does this do without THC? And they started saying, oh, wow, you know, maybe it helps with, you got to be careful what you say, but what a lot of people think is inflammation and things like that. And so then they're like, oh, wow, now there's not THC in it. THC is non-detect. Now I have a product that I can sell anywhere in America. And so people just started pushing it anywhere. They thought since it was unregulated, they would just do anything with it. And
Well, that's what I was just going to ask then. Do you think the fact that it's been, you know, removed, it's not illegal anymore, the fact that, you know, that's such a prominent part, do you think that's played in favor of it in terms of innovating the product and, you know, all these experiments and testing on it? Do you think it's played in its favor or its detriment?
Um, that's a really good question. So I think in some ways it's helped on the manufacturing side because on our efficiency to produce 1 kilo of THC oil versus our now efficiency to create 1 kilo of CBD oil, we have, we can process biomass like 10,000 pounds a day of biomass for CBD, while THC is like 100 to 200. So your manufacturing side, you know, was tenfold of how efficient they were just to make it, to get your costs down. But the marketing was a big issue because now you have a bunch of people claiming that CBD is the cure all for things. And I think that can hurt the consumer in a way because, they think they're going to take something and it's just going to fix all their problems. I mean, if you Google what CBD does, it's got like 10 to 20 different things that people believe it does. Now, I think it can do some of those things maybe, but you've got people going out and spending $100 to $200 a month on something they truly believe is going to help them where it may not. And that's, I think in that way, it hurts the consumer and they get burned and they think it's snake oil, right? It gets like a bad, like in America, you got some believers, you got people that like THC, you got people that like CBD and THC, and then you got people that think it's snake oil, where they just think it's total BS. And I think that really hurt it.
It's funny because something that's illegal, it's illegal because it's really good or because it excels at what it does. Drugs, for example, we don't, drugs are illegal because of that reason. So it's almost like, okay, when we make something legal and we have to scale something up in terms of making it, mass producible, and that's when it becomes watered down, if you like, or it doesn't have the same effect as it was intended when it was illegal, for example. So yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the stage where the US is at now with the CBD market, I think the UK isn't far behind. We started to see it with the athletes, with recovery, with high performance sports. Now it's becoming more of a trend in the household, for the home remedies off the supermarket shelves and so on, which again in itself is really interesting. So yeah, it's good to watch.
Yeah, they're interestingly enough, I think the EU is passing some regulation in February, I think, where they're only going to allow certain American processors to export into Europe or into the EU. And I think there may only be like 10 of them. And we're trying to be one of the 10. But they're going to set up some framework. At least I'm not as familiar with the EU side, but from my understanding, they're going to set up some framework for us to efficiently export. And that's going to totally disrupt the EU market because, let's just say a kilo is sold in America for $600. In the EU, it's sold for $3 to $4 grand.
Yeah.
And they're going to see a huge price compression once we're allowed to do it because the American market is saturated. And if only 10 processors can go to the EU, we got a big bottleneck. So, those 10 groups can kind of, I don't know if they will or not, but kind of get together and set a general market price for that oil. And a lot of business plans that were in the EU are likely based on $3 to $4 grand a kilo. And that's going to drop very, very quickly.
It's a good scenario that because, okay, we're talking about, big businesses in the CBD industry that are potentially looking to collaborate to enter the EU market. So, okay, take this back to, the individual, the person who's thinking about starting the business. Do I go by myself or do I collaborate with somebody who's got a similar idea? Because 9 times out of 10, when you've got an idea of starting a business, if you're an entrepreneur at university or college watching this now and, you've got a really good idea, chances are that, you've noticed it and you've picked it up and generated your idea from just observing something. And chances are somebody else has got that idea, or some other companies, you know, in the early stages of doing that. So I think a brave thing to look at now is, okay, can I collaborate with somebody else? You know, and we'll share the knowledge. There's a big thing on knowledge sharing in every industry. And that's why big firms move next to each other in the city. Finance, you know, prime example of that. So do we share that knowledge? Do I keep my idea to myself, or do I share it with somebody else in my class, in my college group, who has a similar idea, or that I could gain more information from? If I'm a math student, you know, and there's, you know, I've got a product and there's a physics student who's got a similar idea or experience in this, do I keep it to myself because I'm thinking, okay, what if this business does go really well and I want to make millions for myself? Or do I be smart? And I think it's a hard thing to do, to accept that, okay, well, I need somebody else by my side who knows a bit more about something that I don't. That's a really smart concept to understand, especially in the early stages of business and you know, and your own personal career. You know, I don't know everything. There's a common saying, which is, you know, if you're the smartest person in the boardroom, you know, that's the wrong thing to do. You've
got an issue.
You should be the dumbest person in the boardroom, and everybody around you should be the cleverest people, a lot cleverer than you. So it comes back to, okay, swallow your own pride as a young person, as a budding entrepreneur, and don't be afraid to reach out to other people who are better than you at things. You know, there's obviously, if you're an entrepreneur and you're really good at something and you've got the idea, that's absolutely fine. You've got the idea, and the idea is always going to be yours, but you need other people to support you in achieving your goal. So it's, for me, if somebody said, you know, you need to ask other people for help, Jared, when you're 20-year-old, when you're 21-year-old, I would have probably said, no, I'm fine. I can work it out myself. I'll do it. Whereas down the line, you know, we're the same age now, and it's almost like, well, with a bit more maturity, yes, I will ask other people.
Yeah, I've gotten burned alone a couple times. So I gotta start asking around. But it's interesting. It seems like you are passionate about that. You've mentioned it, I think, twice now, and it's interesting you say that, because I wanted to. So I don't know if you've seen my website. It's powered by Catalyst, and the whole framework is to, one, have a link to the podcast, and you know, it has a RSS feed kind of embedded in it to help the downloads and whatever else, because otherwise I'd have to pay someone else. And then the second function is an idea bank. So what I wanted that to be is, you know, I'm a person, I think a lot. I think I can be fairly creative on the business side with solutions or different things. And I want to post those and put them so it's not locked. There's nothing behind it. You could come in and steal it.
Yeah.
You know, if I have a business idea, you can literally log on to my website and steal it. And honestly, I don't have time or the bandwidth to do all of these ideas. But in my opinion, if you wanted to be truly successful, if I was the one who created it, and I also want to have other users come out like yourself if you had anything to post, but you would be like the second most knowledgeable person about that, because you already went through all of this. You're already motivated. You already like the idea. You've already likely done research on it. So it's like, if someone wanted to come on and steal it, great. I may just watch you in 6 months and then watch you fail and steal it back. So, you know, in my opinion, it's like just an area that you can set out ideas, kind of create a forum based on it. And I haven't made it just yet, but that was one of the functions of it, because, you know, I think you and I both agree, if we're alone, we're screwed. You know, if it's just one or two people, you're going to fail. There's not enough bandwidth and there's not enough expertise there.
Definitely. I think individuals can have great ideas, but back to my own Excel, I produced something that was really good, and it's always the times when somebody's challenged me, or somebody's asked me a question, or somebody's challenged the way I've thought about things. So, you know, at the root of this is, okay, well, it's, you know, it's group orientated. Then I can't just go into, you know, tomorrow morning, start a business and be like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. It's going to work fantastically. It's going to be perfect first time. No, it's not. It comes back to, okay, well, can I get critique from somebody else? We share the same passion. We share the same goal in terms of what we want to achieve. but we can also critique each other and learn how to work alongside each other. So I think having that set up and having, you know, that idea bank and sharing knowledge with other people, especially if you've got the similar sort of passion. It's like, you know, prime example is Reddit. You know, everybody who, you know, you find your own people on Reddit if you want to research a certain idea, or you know, you want to find out more about something because you want to start a business, for example. You find the source of more knowledge, which is, you know, for in Reddit, that's, you know, different threads and so on. In a city, if you're a financial firm, you need to be in the middle of the city, you know, and it's these different concepts of sharing knowledge. And I think it's come now, we're mature, well, more mature now. We might still act like we're teenagers, you know, but we're not 20-year-olds playing rugby anymore. That 7 years, and it's, you know, it's not patronizing in a certain way to say it, but 7 years makes a difference, and we can say that because we're slightly more mature. Which, I mean, as you'll vouch for, I wasn't the most mature 7 years ago. As weren't you, but this
I think none of us had quite found our way just yet.
But this, you know, this makes for great advice, and I think now that you've got your own gig and you've got, you know, that mindset with the entrepreneurial sort of setup, it gives you the right to give people advice and to talk about it now, because you've been there and you've been in different scenarios. I think, you know, underlying it, the sport has probably helped us a lot as well.
I think that's a part of what brings our team mentality in, you know, because we could never, when you're on a team and you think you're the number one player and your team loses, you start, you know, understanding that it's not just you out there. It's you got 14 other people, and it's going to take every single one of them, and even coaches included, to get it done. But we've got about 17 minutes left. I want to cut it kind of then. I wanted to ask you, and this has been a great conversation, by the way. It's been very organic, and you know, we kind of threw it together last minute, but I think it's been really great. I think maybe we should hop on again later, just on another episode. But what do you see as right now your maybe business opportunities, or where you're looking or where you're leaning? What are you kind of looking as your horizon, kind of what's going on in your market?
I think for me, I've realized that, okay, I'm learning a lot, and in the industry that I'm in, from the people that I work with as well. I think there's a lot of stigma, obviously, around working in finance, especially for a big investment bank. You know, there's been things over the years, the financial crisis, for example, that have tarred the investment banks with a bad reputation. But one thing that I knew, you know, very early on was that, okay, yes, they have bad reputations, but at the same time, they also have extremely intelligent people and some of the most, you know, inspiring people on this planet. So for me, at the moment, it's about learning as much as I can from these senior people in the bank that I'm at, or in the industry, you know, that I'm in. You can read memoirs, or, you know, there's some really, really good people in this industry as well. So for me, it's about, yes, I want to have my own business in the longer run, but I know my main source of knowledge right now is the industry I'm in. So don't feel like you're under pressure if you're a young entrepreneur, in the sense of, I have to go it alone. I have to start my business by myself tomorrow because I want to start my own business, but I want to do it, you know, for me, it's years down the line when I've gained that much more knowledge, you know, from the people that are working within the industry that I'm in. So no, for me, you know, it's about obtaining as much information as I can, as much skill as I can, and then hopefully letting that translate organically, you know, naturally into a business, maybe, you know, a few years down the line, you know, mid-30s or something like that. So that's where I would see myself now. You know, if we revisit this in 5-6 years time, you know, when we're in our 30s, it might be completely different. So I think, you know, don't have a plan that's too set in stone, because things will change. You know, I could get, you know, promoted into a position that, you know, I never want to leave, which is completely fine. So that's where I'm at now. And yeah, I think, yeah, it's exciting times.
Oh, that's, would you say, if you had just an opportunity you feel like you couldn't pass up as far as a new market that you understood, would you know, because some people may want to leave work and go do these things. what would be if you had an opportunity come up like that, where you were heart set on it, you really believed in it, would you set up a time frame you wanted to work on? Would you start the business before you left? Would you work with your employer on it, or how would you see that?
I think a lot of stories, especially depends what industry you're in. A lot of people do end up starting their own business because they've been doing something alongside their own job. So if we're talking purely from a financial perspective, okay, then yes, I still need income to fund this new business. So I think starting a new business alongside your own business, if you know that, okay, well, I'm not putting as much effort into my day job because I'm putting all my effort into this new venture, that's fine, because there's going to come a point where you have to say, right, I'll speak to my manager and I have to have my notice in and I have to leave the company and start this firm. I would say, if you truly believe in what you're offering is of value, and, depending on what you're doing, again, if you've got the clients already, then yes, 100% do go for it. But it comes back down to, don't be an idiot in the sense of just going all guns blazing. You need to know, as we talked about earlier, what is this risk? Okay, is it a huge financial burden and risk that's gonna, suffice if it all goes wrong, or is there not much financial burden? Is there not much risk? So do it. I would say absolutely 100% go for it. And that's the mentality that I would have if I wanted to start my own business. I would be like, okay, let's do it. Let's take the risk, and be a risk taker for sure.
What would you say your revenue, your yearly revenue would be in your side company, would need to be before you left your current position, if you were?
If you had no overheads, for example, okay, let's take this. If I was going to start up a financial advisory or something, to be a financial advisor, solely operating. Okay, so say in the first year, you sit looking at what, 30, 40,000 £1,000 dollars revenue before you even start bringing anybody else on. Okay, so you look at it. Okay, well, can I do this job individually? Okay, yes. How much money or how much turnover what's the maximum I could make in that year by myself? And then after that, so I would say, okay, year 2, okay, do I take somebody else on with me? And what's the level of this financial advisor as well? Are they same level as me? Are they tip top? Are they at the prime of their industry, or is it a graduate or a university graduate? So, and then after that, it just depends on the client base and your options as to how much revenue you could actually turn over. So you've got to be almost conservative in the first year. You can't overestimate how much you could potentially make. It's never going to be exactly how you project it. And just have that in mind.
So we've got a couple minutes left, and I'll just cut up for us. But what would you say if you had any advice for an entrepreneur? And you've said it, you can be an entrepreneur in a business, in someone else's business. You don't have to start your own. But what would you, just as a broad stroke, what advice would you have for someone in the entrepreneurship?
I was thinking about this earlier and thinking about sort of underlying motivations and so on, and it's kind of tied in well with the end of our conversation. But one thing I grasped, what I struggled with over a number of years, was everybody always says, find your passion. Okay, find your passion and then pursue your dreams. If you find your passion, then you can go do whatever you want. That, and you can edit this out, is, in my opinion, a load of bullshit. What you need to do instead, and what I've done, is you get a job. Okay, you start a business or something like that. Then you let that become your passion. Okay, so rather than going out and trying to find your passion, because if I said to myself, I'm going to go find my passion, I would be out traveling the world, like drinking everywhere, boozing it up, and I wouldn't really find my passion. Just that my passion was drinking alcohol, for example, which isn't great. So what I've done instead was I've followed a decent career path for it, something I was interested in, and then that became my passion afterwards. So what I would say was to people, stop searching endlessly for silly passions or kidding yourself that something's a passion when it really isn't. Okay, get into an industry, get some experience, and then that'll become your passion later down the line. That's when the ball starts to roll, and that's when the penny dropped with me. So that would be my advice. for sure.
No, I think that's awesome advice. And honestly, I totally agree. The things I do now at work were never what I had planned. But I've just accepted that these are the cards I was dealt, and I was going to take those, and I was going to be as good as I could be at that position or at that time. And I think you're totally right. Instead of looking at the grass is greener, look at the grass under you and make that, where you kind of plant your feet and make that the best you can.
That is so true. So
yeah.
true, man.
Well, no, it's been a great having you on, Jared. It's awesome to get to speak to you after 7 years playing rugby together, which was almost a small blip in our career, just because it was I don't know, remember how many months it was we were together, but it was such an impactful time that I think it created a lot of good relationships, like with yourself. And yeah, just really appreciate you having on. It was a very organic conversation. Didn't feel like any of it had to be forced, which is really cool to have. And I think, I'll have to have you back on here sometime if you're down for it.
Let's do it. Absolutely, mate. It's been really good. And it shows that how mature we've become in the last 7 years. So yeah, let's link up again and share our thoughts and opinions on things. It's been really good. Thank you for having me, mate.
Awesome. Really appreciate it, Jared, and hope you have a good day, man.
Yeah, take it easy, mate. All right.
Yeah, you too, bro. See
you later, Goff. Bye-bye.
See you, man. Bye.